Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, where the latest post covering finance and property news. Another Monday, and Edwin is back with me once again. Hi, Edwin. At least we're still speaking the truth at the moment, but of course the question is, for how much longer?
Martini. Misinformation, disinformation, and good old BS, right? That's what it's all about. Uh, it's all happening, Martin. It is all happening very soon. You and I are going to be gagged. We are not going to be able to talk about the spruiking that goes on. We're not going to talk about allowed to talk about underquoting. We're not going to be allowed to talk about properties on market, mortgage stress, and everything else under those headings. So it's only what the government is going to allow us to talk about. So and it's got to be spun, and I guess I got to get it in quick because Albo's got his property on the market that we're going to talk about as well later on. We're going to highlight some truths about that as well. But hey, let's start. Let's start with these dodgy relationships. Somebody said, how much closer can a dodgy relationship get between a real estate agent and a politician, right? Sure, can't get any closer than the bee's dick, as they say.
Well, yeah, but it is crazy. What is truth? Truth will be determined by what the government thinks is true. And that's the real problem. And this, of course, was the Misinformation Bill that was reposted back into Parliament this week. Imminent harm to the Australian economy, including harm to public confidence in the banking system or financial markets, right? Oh, dear, oh, dear. I actually did a show on this, Edwin, because I was so cross about it. And I called it Controlled, Shut Up, Say Nothing, Obey. Because, frankly, that's the problem, right? Well, they're wanting to dial down on all of the issues rather than actually recognise that they're partly responsible for creating some of the biggest issues we've got, including, of course, in the housing market. So this is a very, very concerning step. There's a lot of reaction, of course, on socials about this. It'll be interesting to see how far they go with it. Will they just plough ahead? They're talking about guillotining in the Senate. This is very concerning, though, because basically what it's saying is that the social media companies will potentially be fined if any of this truth, quote, untruth, gets out. And of course, that means that the algorithms will be dialed back, which means that anything like what we produce, which is effectively a bit critical about the government and some of the other things that are going on, are very important from a social perspective. Well, it just can't get discussed because it's not in line with the official line of the truth, which of course is government defined. But as you say, this has been similar to what the real estate agents have been doing for years and years and years, right? Spinning the truth around making sure that whatever the reality is, the truth is that property always goes up, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, Martin, and that's what we're not allowed to talk again. Hold on a minute. I just got to fix my glasses. So yeah, that's that's what I think of that bill. And so,
Absolutely. And just on the sort of the realities of, what's going on, there was this interesting article saying investors are leaving the rental market. Well, funnily, we've been talking about this for a way, 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 way long time, particularly in Melbourne, as we'll see in a second. There's another reason why that's an important observation. And of course, the Labor government spending, there's a blowout of 70 billion or what have you. Consequence of all that is that rates will be higher for longer. RBA's hawkish rhetoric on inflation suggests no relief until 2025, says the top forecaster. This is from Oxford Economics Australia. That was getting quite a lot of coverage, of course. And we got the mortgage pain growing. The value of mortgages in arrears rose again. So that's another little trick. And then here's just one more, just to add a nail in the coffin, I should say. Suburbs with a housing glut, with a homes glut. So there was a series of reports from Suburb Data showing that there were lots of suburbs like Rouse Hill and Schofields in apartments, and Oakville and Austral, Box Hill. This is, of course, in and around Sydney. But you could spin it another way. suburbs where you can beat the buyer's rush. So it's how you spin it. But how do you spin this, Edwin? Moody's have actually basically delivered a blunt warning to Victorian government, which is on track for a credit downgrade. So the fact of the matter is, we wouldn't have been able to say any of that with this new bill had come in.
No, we won't. We won't be able to say. No one will be able to say that. Bring out the real reasons what the WeChat chatters believe their charmers and all the other polys have gone over to China to negotiate on, right? Because it's all about saving the housing market and bringing in more people in general terms. I mean, there's some interesting discussions as to further discussions as to what the WeChat chatters believe is actually happening, and they're correlating it with with some other countries are doing in China. They've got a real massive shortfall of medical supplies and medical practitioners as well, not up to speed. And what's actually happening is you've got specialists in building hospital facilities in Japan. And I believe in Germany as well, they're going to go over and set up shop over there in some of the first tier cities of China, is my understanding of the chatter. And some are saying, well, look, it could be that we could be going over to China ourselves, Martin, and building some swanky, first class hospitals over there, because our fellow Chinese people need them. It's not like we don't need them here. It's not like we don't need them in the rural areas. It's not like we don't need them in many parts of Australia. But it was seemed to be so focused on other things. But hey, that's just hearsay. We'll see what happens after Chalmers comes back, of course. But I've said it for a while, and for a couple of years, over a couple of years, I've said that the WeChat chatterers have got this big development. They've got this eye on this big, they want to build a big city, I guess similar to what you would consider Parramatta to be to Sydney, in Melbourne. And is that going to be the saving grace of Melbourne? Because everybody just wants out. But again, you and I said that the markets there are not controlled. The markets in Australia are not controlled by the general terms, or they're not dictated by the normal circumstances which a market would be dictated by, but it's all really goes back to policy, bad government policy, and that's all we've been getting, and that is what's pushing markets up in certain parts, down in others. And that's why you've got this mishmash of stories, from gluts to oversupplies to investors jumping out and that, because a lot of the decisions that a lot of people are making, and unfortunately even buyers are going to be making very soon, in some parts of the city markets, is they're going to be making more of an emotional decision than there will be a logical decision. And I guess that is one of the things that we're going to also talk about when we discuss Albo's listing, because part of people paying over the odds is not going to be bragging rights, right?
Well, I suppose that could be worth something, but as we'll see as we get into the Albo story, there are a few issues when you scratch below the surface. Just coming back to the hotspots discussion, this was quite an interesting take on it. So this is actually Adelaide. And they're saying that buying hotspots comes with a risk. And I think that's actually the point. But it's interesting that even in the hot Adelaide market, they're talking about significant hotspots. And, there are some there with significant supply. And I do think this is a really important conversation point. We've been saying for some time just how unequal property is across the country. There are some areas where there's a lot of demand and little supply, but there are also now areas where there is quite a lot of supply coming on, investors selling, new builds still going on in some places, and more people wanting to sell. And that's a very interesting observation in the context of another set of articles that came out this last week, which related to not the bank of mum and dad, but the bank of nan and pop. In other words, grandparents. And in fact, there were quite a few articles over the week the Bank of Nan and Pop, great wealth transfer, how boomers are skipping their kids to give directly to their grandchildren. There was also a subtext here: housing is easing the economy. The sector's woes affect the entire economy. To fix it, we need to escape a vicious cycle, which was quite an interesting one too. But just on the Bank of Mum and Dad and Nan and Pop, there were quite a few articles on that, highlighting that there's quite a big flow going on. That's supporting the market quite interestingly. And in my surveys, some of the investors who are actually buying at the moment are buying with funds from the Bank of Mum and Dad, or from the Bank of Nan and Pop, or from the passing down of wealth. And I actually made a show on this yesterday called Look Who's Wealthy Now, because there's a big, multi-trillion-dollar flow of funds coming down from one generation to the next. And as baby boomers fall off the perch, as they will over the next few years, just its age, that's going to have another interesting impact too. So there are some really interesting cross currents. And once again, you and I will say you have to go granular. You have to really understand what's going on down on the ground, because if you don't, then you get caught up with these high level messages that, everything's booming. No, everything's not. There's plenty of supply. No, there's not. So that's why it's really important to really get into the detail.
100%, Martin. And this is what we say over and over again. You really have to identify the market, identify the class of property that you want to buy, your needs, short-term, medium-term, and long-term needs. You really have to plan a lot, a lot more than what many of us did in the past when we bought properties, when we were younger and bought properties, at a more affordable point, where it sort of matched more where it was more in line with what we earned on by way of salaries or by way of incomes. But now it's a planning, and then you've got to also understand: do you really believe the so-called planning or proposed government planning in gazetting and everything else that are going to be brought forth in the future? In other words, do you really believe that they're going to bring about the infrastructure to the new areas in a timely manner, or are you going to get caught out? Are you going to be the bunny that took up the first offers, or because you believed again government policies, government speak, and so forth, and you jumped the gun. I think we're in a time, we've entered a period right now in the spring season where the numbers are showing that there's in many parts, in many markets, there's a lot more properties on the market than what we saw in last year on year. Our numbers have been reflecting that. But we've also got to be careful as to what type of property is coming on the market, and in what condition. Now, I can say, Martin, because obviously we look at the different markets across Sydney on a week-to-week basis, and so the inferior property is achieving a much higher price than they would have achieved 3-6 months ago, and even though in some areas like your Kings Langleys and your parts of your Blacktown LGA, your Kings Parks, because of the demographic shifts and the schooling and what it means to a lot of people. So there's a lot more looking at getting into a market is very, very needs a lot more time, needs a lot more care. We need to take out a lot of the more emotion out, because quite frankly, it's not cheap. As I said, there are very few suburbs in Sydney that freestanding homes sit below the $1 million mark. And although for some it may not, $1 million may not be a lot of money, but for many and the first-time buyers and those that want to get onto the property ladder, it is a lot, especially when it takes anywhere between 10 and 12 years in some cases to just scrounge up a deposit, and then you got to make sure that the bank looks at you favorably in order to give you the loan, and then there's the competition as well. So there are a lot of things, a lot of factors that we need to consider. People need to consider, and of course, yeah, your investment marketing groups, they'll keep on spruiking. They'll keep on pushing for super to be used for investment purposes and the like, and this and that. Yeah, again, that's another can of worms that's we could leave on the side for now because it's a minefield. It's really becoming a minefield with what's on offer, how much people are paying. You got to know who your competition is, and how far they're willing to go. And in some cases, as I've said in previous times, you also got to know, how far you should be going before you walk away. With that satisfied that, hey, that's it. I'm happy to walk away at this price. If somebody else wants to be, throw more money at it, so be it. But we're in a market period of time right now where you got to keep your powder dry and just throw a little bit more caution to the wind. Do a little bit more research as to what you're going to buy because of what's on offer and the cover-ups. As I've been talking today with building and pest inspectors, and what we're going to share later on with regards to that whole area of building and pest inspections, is really alarming. But again, it's something that very soon, Martin, you and I are going to be gagged and we're not going to be able to talk about because unless the government gives us the tick of approval or the hedonics give us the tick of approval, we won't be able to talk about it, right?
Well, spot on. Well, we can talk about this because this is actually government announced. So they actually announced the first step for, quote, the biggest investment in social housing. Labor's released funding to build more than 13,700 new social and affordable homes as part of a $9.2 billion investment from federal and state governments. It's interesting that Oxford Economics basically said, well, if they have 1.2 million target, they probably won't be able to make it. But I suppose this is a small step. And, we should celebrate the fact that there is a bit of a focus on social housing. But I have to say that 13,700, of which 1,267 will go to women and children escaping violence or older women at risk of homelessness. And 40% will start construction this financial year with a second round of funding due in 6 months. It is an interesting announcement at one level, but on another level, Edwin, it's such a small step and it really is not going to have much in the way of moving the dial. But this is very much an announceable that the government would want to talk about. I guess my question is, well, with that announcement and the fact that fuel prices came down, maybe they should have gone to an election pretty much straight away. But then, of course, Albo's got a bit of a problem, hasn't he?
Yeah, they got it. They could have called they should have called the election. Yeah, you're on the money there, mate. With those sort of prices, they should have called the election. It's interesting how the housing that they speak about is not really spelled out what they mean by housing. Now, you and I know what they mean by housing is really smaller dog boxes with a lot more issues, and that's look, it's like you say, it's a good announceable. It's something that's at least it's a start. If they propose to start building them now, then somebody will be moving into one of those apartments in 2.5 years' time. So yeah,
With a big
that's the real.
fanfare, right? With a really big fanfare, right? The first person moving into one of these, social houses that have been government backed, yeah, down the track.
Yeah, look, but again, we're not we're not talking about the biggest elephant in the room, right? And yeah, it's sad. It really, really, really is sad. And but look, word on the street is that from the engineers that I've been talking about with last week, they're still holding this the builders that they know of. They're holding back. we will get a small wave of gung ho builders that will try to take on projects, but even amongst themselves, amongst the industry themselves, they're saying, well, let them go, let it rip, because all they're going to create is issues. We're going to get a lot of builds that are going to be below par. And that's the unfortunate thing. And this is what happens when you've got this lack of cohesion between government policy and meeting the needs of the real needs of the people. We're poles apart.
Mm. Well, and just on that, it is interesting to note that the Productivity Commission came out last week and basically said we need to build higher towers, smaller homes, fewer car spaces, recommended to solve the New South Wales housing crisis, despite the fact that there was another survey that said that something like 82% of people didn't want to live in high rise. I actually made a show about that called Solve the Housing Crisis by Building Smaller, Darker, Higher Homes, which I think is a bit of an issue, really, insofar that, well, we can build stuff, but we can build it cheap, we can build it high, we can build it small, we can reduce the amount of sun coming in, all those things, and don't worry about car parking because people won't need to use cars. But is it actually where people want to live? No, according to all the analysis that we've seen, that people actually don't want to live in those high-rise dog boxes. And by the way, of course, quality of construction very much still in question, as we've discussed on many times previously. So it is an interesting situation where we've got, on one hand, plans being laid which seem superficially to help meet the targets, but on the other hand, aren't necessarily the sorts of things that perhaps people would want to live in. I'm trying to square that circle, and I find it very difficult to do so.
Yeah, it's mismatched needs in demand, right? But look, let's break this open a little bit more, right? Let's along with that comes the other government call, and that is we need 90 to 100,000 construction workers to build.
Exactly. Need to import some more migration so that we can actually bring builders in to build the stuff for the people that live here because we've got high migration. I mean, that's that sort of interesting circularity, which I love. Interesting, the Productivity Commission did actually include in their recommendations that there should be a focus on bringing people in and training people up. But they also said that there should be a refocus of the construction sector, which is massive in Australia, away from state and federal funded projects towards housing. In other words, there are choices being made at the moment. And at the moment, building and construction firms would prefer to be working on government contracts, building some of those big infrastructure projects rather than housing because the risks are lower. Of course, the government always pays their bills. And therefore, it's not necessarily just the numbers, it's what those building and construction workers are actually working on, which is also pretty important.
Yeah, and there's the big union push as well. And yeah, the big coin that you now get. We remember the show that we did early last year with what union-backed workers were getting in comparison to your normal contractors. It's miles apart. But look, the option, Martin, is just bring in prefabricated buildings. If you look at my Twitter post, if you look at my X post there, and there's I attached the video link there on that post, and I mean over in China, I mean call them tofu towers. You know, we'll call them pavlova towers. But look, at the end of the day, whether it's housing the population for 3 months or 6 months, if you can build I think it was a 10 floors or 20 floors, that they built it in 28 hours. It was just Lego blocks. So, hey, let's bring him in. Maybe that's why Chalmers is going to China. Maybe he's going to be importing. He's going to be importing some of these buildings, Martin. I don't know. It's we'll know soon, I guess.
Well, it is interesting, and you talk about this idea of prefabrication and different building mechanisms. There are some around, but But of course, there are also standards that have to be met. And the question is, will those prefabricated construction techniques effectively go around some of those standards or not? That's part of the other question. And interestingly, the Productivity Commission also said, well, some of those building standards are probably getting in the way of building approvals and being constructed. So they're almost recommending diluting some of the standards, which is an interesting observation. But I always want to contrast the trouble with where we are at the moment is that the quality of the construction that actually is going on in Australia is extremely low. Look at all the issues we've had around the country. New South Wales is a good example of that. And yet the Productivity Commission is saying they're getting in the way of allowing more construction to go. So I'm trying to square that circle too, and I find it really, really difficult to do, right?
Yeah, well, you talk about standards, but this is what a lot of people are a lot smarter. We're a lot smarter, and the internet has made many smarter, and I guess a lot of others more ignorant and stupid. Depends what they watch. But look, with regards to standard, and this is why I say it's mismatched needs and demand, because people don't want to live in high-rise developments in the western suburbs. I mean, it's you cook inside these dog boxes in the west. You're surrounded by concrete. You got to use uh, air conditioning units. I mean, and the power that those units suck up, it's absolutely incredible. And this is what the government's proposing to build high rise, northwest, southwest, and west, and that to accommodate and to meet the needs of the people that want to get into long-term housing, by way of either investors buying them or by way of being owner occupiers. So and this push is really doesn't meet what people are looking at. And then obviously we've got to consider, which you and I have been pining on about for a very, very long time, and that is all roads lead to Sydney. There's, you can whistle Dixie if you believe that the government's going to be decentralising all the infrastructure that's in the city. If anything, they're pushing harder and harder every year in year out to get everyone back into focus more on the city, or focus more on the bigger commercial hubs, because that is one way of controlling, and that is in their premises is we're bringing down emissions because our people won't have to travel as much. But it's this whole thing of no infrastructure, and you move out further west into these sort of scenarios, and the further you go outside of the Sydney metro area, obviously the costlier it becomes to live as well, because you've got to commute a lot further to go to work. You've got to the support structures aren't there to meet people that are ill or unhealthy. They've got some health issues, and as I've said before, it's much costlier to get older in the West than closer to the central hubs for those very reasons. And transport mobility, all that plays a big part. So again, policy gone nuts, gone mad. Not really looking at the bigger picture and not wanting to address real issues that would certainly bring about a proper transition. And we're not going to be talking about it not whilst we've got a lame duck opposition on at state level as well as at federal level.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that both sides of politics seem to be not covered in glory at the moment for all sorts of reasons. Look at the latest stoush on the the Reserve Bank. Of course, this week there's going to be debate about the government housing policy, and the Greens, of course, are involved in the middle of that, and that could also go a bit pear-shaped too. So there's lots of weird things. But talking about weird things, let's go a bit granular. Of course, Albo has got his property on the market. This is one of his investment properties, and here we are. This is the desirable residence. But you've been doing a little bit of investigation, Edwin.
Well, yeah, I got a property inspection, and I was able to make some notes on for the show. On there, look, straightforward. The guide is at 1.9. I think the expectations are a bit higher than that. I believe the expectations will be around the 2 million to 2.1. But is it worth more than the 1.9 guide, or is it worth less? It's in Dully Chill. It's sought after area. We've seen Dully Chill, grow in value, dramatically over the last 12 months. Anywhere between 15 and 20%. For some of the freestanding homes, we've seen they've had a huge rise. I mean, this is a terrace. You don't have you don't have a car space or in terms of you got to park on the street. You're subject to that, which brings about concerns if you're a young family. But who's going to buy it is the question. Who will want to buy it? Is it going to be a young family with children? I don't believe it will be a young family with children because of the fact that you don't have a car space there, and especially if you've got a very young family. Can you imagine if the road is congested, full of parked cars, and you got to park 10 houses down or 8 or 10 houses down, and you got to carry the stroller and the shopping bags right up to your front door, and and there's a torrential downpour, those sort of things. So they're the things that are going to be talked about. Downsizers, I don't think it's a downsizer home because it's not. There's too many steps and they're very steep internally. It doesn't suit a downsizer. Or could it be somebody that just wants the bragging rights, Martin? Could be a Labor supporter or an Albo fan. I mean, could be Taylor Swift. I mean, I know that Albo and Taylor Swift hit it off, so maybe she's going to buy it as the pad when she comes over to Sydney. There's some of the questions that you got to talk about. My money's on young professionals with no children that just want to get in. But that's as to who's going to buy it. But the thing is, would you really want to pay that price? Is the next question.
Yes, and there's a couple of sort of angles to that, right? The first is, what are prices going to do over the next 12 months? Are they going to continue to rise or not? And there are some early trends that maybe we're seeing sort of property prices go sideways and maybe even fall in some areas of Sydney. There were some reports that came out recently. But there's also a very more specific question about this particular property. And, is it all it dressed up to be? Are there issues that you would need to be aware of? And of course, that would take you directly to an inspection report, which, as we've discussed before, has its own interesting question marks.
Well, definitely. And this is something that if you're going to be relying on the before you buy, formerly known as before you bid, report that the agent is providing or that you buy, at a cheaper rate than getting your own, well, then you're going to have a rude shock, in my opinion. So if you, as you roll through the video there, that I took the inspection, and by the way, for our followers and our viewers, I did ask the agent if I could have permission to videotape, and he said yes, and hence the reason why I've got these videos for our viewers and followers today.
Yeah.
So if you look. So as you walk through from the front, so that's the downstairs guest bathroom. The fall of the tiles, it falls away from the drain. They don't really. There's no real fall in those floor tiles. So if there's overflow, the sinks overflow, well then you're going to get water running all the way down through the first level there. Yeah, there's cosmetic issues with the fixtures and fittings there. The yeah, they're worn. It was bought. Albo bought the house in 2015, and I'd say he bought it as you see it, without the furniture, obviously. Nothing much has been done to the property since then, so it's had a bit of wear and tear. Interesting there in as I walk through. This is a very quick walkthrough. You see, I'm knocking on the blue board there. That sheet of blue board that's in the party wall, adjoining to the to the other terrace, and that was bowed, and it's pushing out. So and for me, it shows signs, and it felt very damp. Shows signs that there's moisture coming down from the top, whether it be from the upstairs balcony or could even be from as high as the roof area where the water traveling through the two course, the party wall that's got to have a cavity in the middle in order to fire issues. It could be a number of things, but that blue board is pulling away from the wall, and it's warped due to the moisture. Now, the building inspector that provided that before you buy report says nothing about it. There's nothing stipulated on his report about that. So that was some of the quick issues I picked up on the downstairs. And again, I had to be quick with this. It was a private inspection, but I had limited time because the agent was a bit late. He had to go elsewhere as well. That just, I was just trying to check and see if I could see just anything on the go. I couldn't get out into the balcony to see what was happening there with the tiles or whether there was the waterproofing had failed. Small bedroom. Again, I couldn't really move things around because that the bedhead wall that butts onto the main bathroom, and this is where the problems that I saw, the main problems really arose, is the tiles had lacked grout. The so you could tell that there'd been a lot of moisture penetrating the tiles, going into the underneath the tiles, and that water was traveling through the shower. The shower screens there, they didn't have, the shower recess areas didn't appear to have any water stops, and the water had been traveling through underneath that whole shower screen there. And it was an interesting position where they put the drain there, the floor waste, and the tiles. The falls were not right, but as you see through there, in both the ensuite and the main bathroom, there's that had similar issues, and because of the way that the tiles, the fall wasn't right. It was ponding to one side of the shower recess area. You could tell because the tiles were flat, and just although it hadn't been used, the bathrooms hadn't been, and the showers hadn't been used. I dare say if I turned the shower taps on and I plugged the floor waste and overflowed that area, I dare say that within about 10, 15 minutes, we would have seen that we would have had evidence of the water tracking back out into the corridor way. I'm so confident of it. Now so that's just my walkthrough. In the second video that I sent to you, Martin, I sort of look a little bit more deeply into uh, the bathroom areas and see that the door jamb there, that was uh, the timber had rotted as the water travelled over the years through the sides, because the water was actually the fall was towards the wall rather than to the middle of the room, so that the floor waste can pick it up. And that was the timber was rotted, so there's evidence there of moisture coming through. So literally both bathrooms have to be redone. But the building report that was provided by the agent, and I dare say by Mr. Albanese, because he would have signed off on it, is in my view is very light, very very light, and young people, anybody who buys it, they're going to be up for anywhere between, in my opinion, they're not going to get much change out of $100 to $120,000 to rectify all the issues that I would consider to be main issues, but the building inspectors don't consider these to be main issues. That's the only reference to the bathrooms, Martin. That's the only reference to the issues that the building inspector found in the bathroom. That is absolutely shameful. And with regard to the party wall, to the porch area at the bottom, there was don't know whether you got the other slide that I sent you. Again, it was just a few lines like that and a photograph of showing the opposite wall, not the main wall where the party wall where the issue was. So this is absolutely shameful. But our insider, Martin, in in the building industry here in this particular company, our insider said that, as a matter of fact, the building inspectors are now encouraged. And by the way, this comes it is because of the deregulation and because of basically their code has been watered down so much that that they don't have to disclose minor defects, and they would consider the bathroom issues and the issues that I picked up, they would consider that as minor issues, right? Given the fact that they're still going to cost anybody between $100,000 and $120,000. And I'm talking about rectifying the wet areas, the two bathrooms, the laundry area, the party wall, and then and other issues there. You're not going to get much change out of $100,000. So they don't have to disclose. They don't have to write down or disclose minor defects, nor defects that are not structural. So unless they're structural, they're the only defects that they need to write down in the report, right? Or they don't have to write down any issues unless it impacts usage. And as far as this building inspector is concerned, he may have done his job according to to his standards, but dear God, you have to be very careful if you're going to rely on the building reports that agents give you, because that was a 5 minute inspection. Now, if I'd spent more time there, I would have liked to see what was happening in the walls in between. Yeah, that was backing onto the shower recess areas, the bedroom walls that were backing on. To get an idea as to how long, how far the leaks had gone through. I didn't have any of my equipment with me, but I could tell just on the surface, on face value, that you've got water problem issues there in the bathrooms, and the way the tiles have been laid, the falls are away from the floor waste. So you've got major issues. But then this is it. This is it, mate. This is when politics meets the property arena, and
Well,
and this is what you get.
but the point is, we're not picking on Albo, but we're just using this as a case study to show the difficulty that the building inspection reports that are actually provided by the vendor are so superficial that they actually miss quite important points. And so often when I chat through my one-on-one conversations with people who've bought places, they've subsequently discovered all sorts of nightmares, from water leaks and floors that need to be redone through to, frankly, bathrooms that need to be ripped out and replaced. And so they're up for significant costs that they never budgeted for. And what it means is that you're actually buying on a set of false premises. Now, the fact is that the rules and regs are so weak that there is no actual legal remedy for that situation, right? And if you look carefully at these sort of building and inspection reports, the standard Mickey Mouse words basically, completely exclude any liability for almost anything that they say. So if you were thinking of purchasing any property, and it doesn't have to be just an older property, even more modern properties, it's really, really important to do your own due diligence and to, what you saw in 5 to 10 minutes. Well, there was probably quite a lot more to be seen if you'd actually spent more time there, right? And when I used to be in building surveying, a proper building structural survey on a property would take somewhere between 2 and maybe 3 hours, depending on the size of the property. And you would really go into all the crevices and all the corners, and you'd really pull apart a lot of the significant issues that, well, most properties have issues. And then the judgment is, how significant are those issues? Because there are some that are actually relatively superficial and you can get away with them, maybe just with a bit of superficial work. But there are others that fundamentally change the value, the real value of that property. And you don't know until you've done the work which end of the spectrum you're actually looking at. So this is why this is such a critical point. And so, the general object lesson, if you're buying a property, you must do the work.
Look, 100%. There's a thing called wear and tear, and you can appreciate. I mean, the electrical appliances were absolutely, putrid. The exhaust fan, the cooktop, the oven was disgusting. The tenant that lived in there before, I don't think he ever cleaned the bloody thing, and yet he runs I believe he runs a local cafe not too far from there. So, so be careful. Not only you're going to have to change but look, electrical appliances, those sort of things, wear and tear. I mean, that's Albo bought it brand new in 2015. That's, so you could say it's what, 9 years old, 8, 9 years old, and they've gone past the use by date. All these other things that people are buying. Look, the bathrooms looked okay from a reasonable person's perspective. You could say that they looked on the surface, they looked okay, but it's what you can't see, what the average person doesn't understand is the issues that they're gonna have. Now, even though, let's say I had my moisture meter with me and I did a moisture meter test, I wouldn't have picked up much there because those shower areas, they haven't been in use for over a month. So, I may have picked something up, may not have. I would have had to really run as I said, the shower area and block the floor waste just to let it flood a little bit to see, and then wait and come back after 10 minutes or so to see, and then do a proper moisture test, and then it would have been a different story. But the signs were there, in my opinion. The signs were there for me to advise any one of my clients, if we were seriously looking at that property, to say, hey, okay, let's go with the guide at 1.9. You're going to be forced to come up with another $100,000 to fix the issue. Given the fact that the falls in the bathroom, the tiles were wrong, they have to be rectified. So, all right, so that's 100,000 more to fix all the wet areas. Then there's all the cosmetic stuff. The color of the walls, the painting, the flooring, the new electrical appliances. Let's throw in another $30,000 at it. So you're now no longer budgeting on 190,000 and just turnkey and move in and bring your furniture in. It's another 130. 1.9 plus 130 more. So that takes you to 2.03. So and it starts adding up. Now, if you're relying on a car and you're saying, well, yeah, I could park on the street and I'll just get a council permit. My question is, will the council increase the permit prices to be able to park on the street, and how much would that increase by? I mean, these are progressive councils, and in historically, I haven't had much chop with Marrickville Council. They're not the most friendliest council to deal with. So they're your ongoing costs. So then you really have to make up your mind. But like I said, Martin, hey, on the day it could go for 2.1 because somebody just wants the bragging rights to say, hey, Albo owned this, and he's good mates with Taylor Swift and all the other pop stars out there, and he'll Yeah, and you might even get a signed autograph of, portrait of Albo. You can hang on your lounge room wall.
or hang it in the toilet, depending on what your preference is. Yeah, very interesting, Edwin. Well, I think this is a very good, again, an object lesson. In fact, we are going in just over a week's time. We're going to actually do a live show on some of these more structural issues, because these videos, I think, is just so informative, and it really shows people what to look for. So hopefully we'll be able to look through some of your libraries, and we'll be able to do some of that commentary just like we did. So mark your diaries, folks. In a little while, we'll do that on a Tuesday live. But before we close, there's another conversation we need to have, and that is underquoting, because this is an astonishingly bad story, unfortunately. And once again, the vendors got crunched.
And this is it. We're in that time now in some parts of Sydney, in some of the markets where you've got a lot of properties on market, you've got a lot of properties getting passed in, and agents are what we call buying the listing. In other words, pricing the property a lot higher than what the real expectations are, what they believe that could achieve for the property, given the market conditions and where we are right now. But yet they'll sell the story, they'll sell the dream to the vendors, and then they'll convince, or the vendors will collude with the agents, or convince the vendors to collude with the agents, or the vendors may not necessarily know in some cases that the agent is basically underquoting from what they gave the market appraisal, what they put on the agency, the selling agency agreement, that they said that they could achieve, and they basically drop it below that price. So this is a time where vendors have to be very, very careful. The unfortunate thing with this one, Martin, is fortunate and unfortunate. I'm fortunate to know one of the agents that also went in there to give a market appraisal on this property, and he knows the vendor very, very well. And it's a sad story when you think about it, because the poor old girl, she literally got duped big time. She got duped. She got sold the dream that she was going to get $1.6 million for the sale of the home, on the day. My insider went in there and gave market appraisal of 1.4, which is closer to reality. Even before this result, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work that out. For the type of house, had no garage, needed a lot of work, a lot of renovation work. So it's at between 1.35 in my view to 1.4 on a good day. So this is so they got crunched. The old girl got crunched badly. She's a 94-year-old lady. She basically got steamrolled by the selling agent. I could hear the conversation because I was there at the auction. I could hear the conversation between the agent, the auctioneer, the agent's assistant, and the old girl that was sitting across the road in the park. Totally dismayed and bewildered why nobody would pay more than the 1.3. Originally, the only bid, the one and only bid, was at 1.3, and then they talked that buyer up to 1.37. They dropped the hammer at 1.37. The old girl, I mean, this is short of, in my view, short of being criminal, taking advantage of the elderly. But vendors beware. This is what's going to happen more if you're going to allow agents to play the shenanigans, particularly when you've got a lot more competition on market in your area. And if you want to play these games, well, you deserve it. But if you don't know that the agent's playing these games, well, then you find out you need to sack them on the spot, and report them to fair trading. I'm still trying to talk to my insider to um, uh, tell his side of the story, because at the moment it's just hearsay by way of me telling the story of what I've got. Yes, I've got some WhatsApp messaging from my insider, on background, so our viewers and our followers can see I'm not just talking to myself there. By the way, or Dusty, it's not Dusty on the other side, um, but it would be a lot better, and I would be more than happy to take this to put it to a number of property reporters, because this story needs to be told. And if he does agree to say something, I did speak with him last week. I said, I'm happy to go to fair trading and put the whole story to fair trading because it needs to be told. This is, yeah, it's sad. But this is what happens, and this is the aftermath of it, and this is the shenanigans that agents like to play.
Yeah, unfortunately, Edwin, it's not the only time I've heard the story, and it's getting worse actually at the moment, according to certainly what I'm seeing and the conversations I'm having at the moment. More people are being duped, and they're ending up with a very different outcome to what they were told they were going to get when they were given the listing in the first place. Now, we've discussed previously the due diligence you need to do if you're going to employ an agent, and very importantly, pitching the price right is going to be very important to be able to actually get the right amount of interest and the right outcome. But if you do just employ them because they said, well, we can get you more, doesn't necessarily mean they will get you more. And then, of course, there's that horrible discussion subsequent, well, we're not finding the market actually where it was. You got to meet the market, all those same conversation points. And you end up, if you're going to decide to sell, often selling significantly below what you thought. And there's really no accountability. But there is law that should protect people, but the law is ineffective at the moment.
No, it's weak. It's not policed. It's we don't have the manpower on the ground on the day. In my opinion, there should be at least 15 to 20 inspectors attending different auctions, and there should be a regulation that every agent should have the full file, the full marketing file, the full file of the courage of the marketing campaign, of the sale of the property on the day at the auction. So if an inspector turns up and asks for the file and wants to go through the file and talks to, because that's what we used to have in the past, Martin. We used to have spot checks. Victoria brought it up not too long ago. I'm not sure whether they're still doing it, but they sort of moved forward on that front. But New South Wales is just lagging. Who knows? Maybe post Albo's auction things may change, but for now it's same old, right?
Yeah, it
Until
is.
we get through that auction.
So the bottom line from these two conversations is if you are a prospective purchaser, you've got to do your due diligence. If you are a vendor thinking of selling, you've got to do your due diligence. So you can't just, whichever side of the fence you are, buyer or seller, just go with what the professional says. You actually need to do the work. And that's a really very salutary warning that we've been sounding for a little while, but it's not getting any better, unfortunately. So this is an important conversation. Now, as we come to the sort of last little part of the show, we try to cover the latest on the numbers, and we'll do that now. So in Sydney, this is according to Domain definition of a Sydney region. On the 9th of September, there were 19,130 properties listed. And then on the 16th, a week later, 19,526. So a further rise, and quite a significant rise, actually. And in fact, your trend chart shows that the trends are accelerating away. So as we discussed earlier on, higher listings, and we're definitely seeing more and more properties listing. But again, Edwin, it's worth saying, isn't it, that whilst we're seeing more property, it doesn't necessarily mean more high quality property.
No, and again, this is where people are still paying premium price for what would we consider to be premium property, and like location, type of property, and so forth. So it's just be careful. Interesting how we've really pulled away. Can you imagine, Martin? Can you just imagine if we had stronger policies against foreign investors and against greater control of the immigration policies. Where we would be back in terms of sentiment in terms of sentiment, we would be back to where we were in 2019 almost, because you've got high mortgage stress now. You've got and that's growing by the surveys that you do, the surveys that you post on on your chats as well, and on your on YouTube, and it's yeah. But uh, let's keep on throwing more cushions. Let's keep on throwing more mattresses underneath these property market, and let's think of something else to keep on propping it up.
Yeah, and as I said earlier on, the other factor that is not being fully factored in a lot of people's thinking is this shift down through the generations of that equity wealth that's been created. When people unfortunately fall off the perch, or indeed if people make a gift to allow first-time buyers to effectively buy a property that they couldn't otherwise afford. So that's another factor that needs to be brought in. But if you think of high migration, if you think of the tax incentives for investors, and if you think of the intergenerational wealth shift that are going on, those are all things supporting the property market. And of course, the fear of financial stability risk if property prices were to fall, and the political fallout if people actually started seeing their property values go down, are the reasons why politicians and the Reserve Bank don't want to see property prices fall. That's why we're in this stupid situation where, unfortunately, from an affordability perspective, prices are really adverse, despite the fact that the listings are continuing to rise. But as we saw in Melbourne, of course, eventually the pricing worm turns, and it is worth just looking at the Melbourne story. So in the Melbourne region, this is again on the 9th of September, 28,207 properties available. And then the following week, 28,452. So again, another further rise. And once again, we are seeing the housing sector rather than the apartments still driving the story there. And like I said earlier on, Edwin, the truth is, of course, that the Moody's are getting twitchy about the credit rating in Victoria. Property prices dropped again on average. And we know that in some parts of Melbourne, property prices, particularly in the outer suburban areas, are sliding somewhat quickly. And I think that what we're seeing in Victoria is a bit of a leading indicator of what we'd like to see elsewhere.
Yeah, look, in a way, I'm sort of, I hear you. I sort of, I'm not fully convinced. All the signs aren't showing, aren't there as yet
Yep.
in other capital cities, and because the exodus that we're getting from investors in Victoria is a lot higher, and as I said, we've also got a lot of other influences that bolstering the Sydney market in many regions, which is your WeChat chatter influence, your silent tigers, what they do with properties, and in terms of getting a greater rental yield. Now, look, I would say that I think the nail on the coffin for Melbourne, and we'll see a further drive down in property price values there, which will is if construction really spurred on, if construction really picked up. At the moment we're coasting on on second gear. But if it really cranked up, and if they put the turbo, they flick the switch, the turbochargers and the nitrous on, then it would be a different story in even for the Sydney market, because we would get a lot of more a lot of medium density developments in a lot of areas that are still favorable to a lot of people. And we would get a lot more duplexes. We are seeing some areas where, like your some of the below Carlingford, you've got Dundas Valley, these areas where you've got you just duplexes are popping up everywhere. In parts of the Shire area as well, you got a lot of duplexes there, but you'd get a lot more. and that would be desirable. But the unfortunate thing, Martin, is that the high interest rates as well are keeping the bigger players, the bigger builders, from coming in. Cost of construction. But if that switch is dialed back, or if that lever is dialed back, and you get a lot more momentum with construction, yeah, then we've got a game on our hands. We've got, as the Americans say, let's play ball. But there's a few, but it's the Sydney region where obviously it's my backyard. The Sydney region is it's unique in many ways, and as I was talking to my daughter over the weekend, and I was talking to some other friends and family as well, saying it's this whole polarization of communities that are driving prices up, and in some areas, some communities are keeping prices plateaued and somewhat subdued. And that has a big influence as well. So yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting, but as I said before, and as I know we agree on, and that is uh, you have to be a lot more sober to walk into this property arena than what people were, 6, 12 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key message. And again, highlighting the point that it varies, right? Different locations, different types of property, different parts of the country. Let's look briefly at the Brisbane story because, of course, Vegas is still pretty hot. On the 9th, we had 3,787 properties available in the Brisbane region, 3,856 the following week. So a little bit of an uptick there as well. But prices are still quite buoyant. Although, interestingly, again, I am seeing some investment properties are coming back on the market. If we look at the auction story, well, the auctions are still quite hot. The coming week, the count is continuing to rise. But again, that doesn't give you the full story, does it, Edwin? Because in some cases, the truth is that properties are sold before auction. In other cases, the auction route is being used when probably it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and this is and we've seen a lot of properties. Auctioneers are taking a lot longer to actually get a deal done on the day, and those deals aren't as high as a lot of what the vendors' expectations or what the agents told the vendors to expect, and we're getting a lot of properties passed in. So hence, you'll see the numbers for the unreported are going to start climbing. They're going to start climbing a lot more, and we're going to start, properties that were supposed to go, under the hammer on the day. They're going to go MIA when the reports come about. But look, there's a lot more enthusiasm in terms of selling. Obviously, people want out as well, and the best way to sell a property that's got a lot of issues is by, many agents would say, is by auction because the shorten the campaign, and people are prone to do less due diligence as well. So yeah, that's why we're getting a surge of numbers, but not a lot of translating into sales on the day.
Yeah, and this was an interesting little tweet that you reposted from Louis Christopher talking about a home in Epping that was passed in with the highest bid of 2.9. The auction guide was 2.8. As you said, more listings on market, more competition, more pressure on agents, more underquoting. What we aren't told? Question mark statement.
Yeah, yeah, it changed my mind if things are going to keep on going that way, and they will. And this is where the regulators really have to come in and come on and do something. But again, Martin, it's this this in from what George tells me, because he's up to date with what's happening with the regulators. He talks to them just about on a week by week basis, and it just there's a lot of in-house fighting, and they're in shambles. Hence the reason why we're not seeing a lot more progress with all these policies. Remember, that they were bringing new policy, new guideline, new this, new that for underquoting, for this and that, and we're going to smash the selling agents that do the wrong thing and this and that, and it just all went by the wayside. And from what George tells me is that there's internal issues, and until they fix that, they're not going to fix the greater picture, which is the greater market.
Announceables, it's all about announceables rather than doing things, right? Because if you say things enough, then you don't sound as though you need to do anything. Let's quickly look at the rents in Sydney on the 2nd of September, 12,110. And on the 9th of September, 11,910. And in Melbourne on the 2nd, 10,621 versus 10,732. So small moves, but nothing dramatic there at the moment. And I guess, Edwin, the time of year will suggest that we're going to see some movements now in the rental stock. People are beginning to think about the spring, and then, we count to Christmas, and then the new academic term will start in January after the holidays, or February. So it'll be interesting to see how the rental sector moves. But again, I'm still hearing quite bad stories of people being forced to effectively take a further rent rise, and that hasn't gone away, and the inflationary impact of that is still very present.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing. It's bugger all in comparison to how many people are out there looking for that relief, paying less and to pay less, and not being able to move, and having to put up with uh, crap conditions, and not be able to say anything or complain, or call the property manager for the property manager to action rectification work. And look, is it any wonder, some people, they're like that young fellow in Melbourne, got such a huge following because he was, bringing to light, good, bad, or otherwise, bringing to light some of the conditions that their renters had to endure. But it all has to change. It all has to change, and I think it's just the government's got so many. They're trying to juggle so many fiery swords. They don't know which way to go. So they're just throwing, like you said, just throwing good news of announceables. Oh yeah, we're going to be building 13,700 homes. Oh, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing that. Yeah, gonna. But it all, it's not wanting to meet, not wanting to face the real issues, and not really wanting to consult with people in the know. I mean, I've got a fair bit to say as to who they've consulted with in the past to assist them with underquoting, and they're the people that are instigators and have seminars on how to sell the dream and then crunch the vendors in the first week. So go figure. They're the people that they use as consultants to help them on underquoting. That's the lunacy of government. And that was the previous government as well.
Spot on, Edwin. Yeah, unfortunately, it's idiocy, isn't it, really, when you think about it? Well, as we come to the end of the show, I will just recap, but reinforce your tip of the week, which is all about making sure that you choose your selling agent and marketing campaign wisely. You have one opportunity.
That's right. You've got one crack at hitting the bullseye. After that, it's a downhill. It's a downhill run. And at this time, you need to, you know, uh, choose the agent and the marketing campaign very, very carefully. And it's not just about price. There are a lot of other things that happen, and this is what we do to with our clients as well. That we help them to prepare the homes for sale. Is we interview the agents. We want to know why the reasons why they want to go a certain path. They'll all want to go auction. Why? And if you want an auction, you want a shorter campaign. Are you willing to negotiate on your marketing fee? Are you willing to negotiate on your on the commission Pete? And what are you going to show us? What are you going to do in that period of time more than what, all these things come into play. But then, of course, you've got a historical reference as well, which we have on agents that we interview, as to you look historically as to what they how they've performed in the past, and what previous vendors really say, not what's up on your Google reviews, or on your other reviews that they buy good reviews on. They're things that we need to be very careful, because it's your biggest asset that you've got, and you want to make the most of it on a sale, in order to be able to downsize and look after yourself, or look after your family by way of dishing out the inheritance early so that they can get into the property arena. So there are many reasons why you need to be very, very cautious. And again, look at it soberly, not get Google-eyed over, oh yeah, you're going to give me $3 million, when it was never worth $3 million. It's only worth 2.5 or 2.7. But then on the day, it all falls apart, and then you're struggling to even get the 2.5 in your second campaign.
Spot on, Edwin. And it's just worth just underscoring a couple of things about downsizing in particular. Of course, there is, for those over a certain age, you can put some into superannuation if you downsize. And I actually think the downsizing story is one that we're seeing quite a lot of activity at the moment. There's significant numbers of people, well over the 1.2, 1.3 million people in the downsizing realm. In other words, thinking of moving into a smaller place to try and release equity to be able to, as you say, create funds for other purposes. And I actually think that the downsizing angle and how you think about that's really important. But the point is, you have one chance to make the right decision about who you actually go with. And unfortunately, quite often, certainly my experience is that people are making the wrong decision with who they actually couple their future to in terms of the agent. And if you don't get the right agent, as we discussed earlier on, you can end up with the wrong outcome. So caveat emptor, make sure that you're actually clear. And as like I say, whether you're a buyer or whether you're a seller, do your due diligence. Edwin, thanks once again. Great show tonight. I really appreciate that. And I'll look forward to next Monday for our normal rant, but on Tuesday of next week, we'll then do a more detailed deep dive live show, and we'll go through some more case studies and examples of properties that have got problems, because they're always worth talking about, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, we'll see. Look, we're going to go for a tour as to the new complex that was opened up last week by the Premier. I'll see what I can dig up there and see what people are saying. Let's see how we go. If not that, I'll try and pull up some other interesting videos that I'll do on the fly.
Look forward to that, Edwin. Well, thank you very much, and have a good week. And I hope you don't stay too cool. I know it's pretty chilly down there in Sydney at the moment, but wrap up warm, and it'll soon be summer.
Oh yeah, soon, just around the corner.
See you soon, Edwin. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.